backing them is just a no-brainer that I got to do it because I want to be learning from him or her. During that process itself, I think the passion will keep you going rather than the thought of how much money you're going to make.
Today's guest is James Tan. He's a managing partner at Quest Ventures, and prior to this, he was the co-founder and COO of Wutuan, a daily deals platform and a Nasdaq-listed company. James also serves as an advisor or board member at the Applied Innovation Institute, Action Community for Entrepreneurship or ACE, and many more. His super angel investments includes the likes of Carousel, 99 Group, Vulcan Post, Caro, Shopback, Axis, Burple, and many more. Angel investing is not for the faint-hearted. It's the highest risk asset class, but also potentially the highest rewards, with the opportunity to guide a founder to the top. Today I'm talking to James about how he got started, mistakes and lessons learned, and strategies for angel investing. Let's get started.
Thank you, Vanessa, for inviting me onto the show.
So the key question I want to ask here, and I'm dying to find out, is how do you get started as an angel investor in the first place?
I started angel investing very early, more than 10 years ago, and it was really angel investment into everything. We're talking about the likes of even movies. And I really only focus on technology as an investment class when I got really very serious about this and decided to focus. And also because of the influence an organization called the Business Angel Network of Southeast Asia, or BANSI for short, had on me. One of the professors whom I admire very deeply, Professor Wong Po Kam, is the founding chairman of BANSI, and he was one of the advocates for angel investments in this region, in Southeast Asia itself, when the first dot-com boom started in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And BANSI has continued its mission since, and last year I handed over the reins as chairman of BANSI to my new chairman, and so I've come a full circle then.
I see. And was there any rationale of, why tech focus and why Southeast Asia region?
I want to do things that I understand in. So for technology, it's an area that I always felt I have a bit of understanding in. And it's an area where I have a lot of passion for, and I just get a lot of excitement reading things about technology, whether it is old periodicals like PC Magazine, or even today's stuff like TechCrunch and so on. I get a kick out of reading new things. And Southeast Asia is just an area that I grew up in, and it's an area that I think has just so much potential. Southeast Asia is the fastest growing region in the world last year, and there are so many areas and so many countries in this region itself that continue to see dynamic growth during COVID.
I see. And did any of the interest that you have for tech, right, reading about tech, come from your entrepreneurship days?
Yes, absolutely. So as an entrepreneur myself, I think that interest in investing into fellow entrepreneurs is definitely there. After all, you can't be starting and doing everything yourself. So for example, using more recent examples, when the likes of someone like Darius Chong, who is a serial entrepreneur and started 10Cube, got acquired by McAfee, and started out, came to us and said, I'm starting out something else, would you like to back me? Obviously yes, because number one, I wasn't in Singapore at that time. I was in China, busy running my own business. Number two, he has proven himself as an experienced entrepreneur. He knows what to do. He knows how to fundraise. He knows how to get a company to a liquidity event or exit. So why not? And the best way we can help such entrepreneurs is really not just in talking to them from time to time, which is important, it's called mentorship. It's also not in terms of just referring networks to them, which is important because networking and expanding the networks of busy entrepreneurs is important. But it's also in putting our money where our mouth is. If we truly support the entrepreneur, then let's put some skin in the game, and for me that's angel investment money.
So from what I'm hearing, right, it's not just about financial returns for you. It's about growing the next startup and also helping and being behind the founder, whether it's financially and also in any other strategic value, right? And this is why perhaps that you chose to go into pretty much one of the highest risk sort of investments compared to putting your money elsewhere. So what are your thoughts on why you decided to really go all out into private investing?
As you rightly pointed out, angel investment is a highly risky form of investment.
Exactly.
The asset class, if I can even call it an asset class at all, is highly illiquid. You don't see money coming back. There's no dividend there unless the company has some liquidity event. Otherwise, you're not going to see any single cents back, much less your capital back, until the company gets to some liquidity event. And liquidity event for us simply means whether it goes acquired by someone or it goes into some public stock exchange as a listed company. So given all that, some of the best returns, some of the top returns in the world continue to be realized and seen in illiquid asset classes like this. I want to use a very traditionally used phrase, which is low risk, low gain, and high risk, high return. So you can look at angel investment as one of the classes which fits exactly into that idiom.
I see. So speaking of financial outcomes and also how illiquid this asset class is, right? Is there any financial strategy that you set for yourself? Like, okay, if I'm putting money into this, minimally this amount of articles.
I think it's important to set out as a portfolio approach first, to say if you have a net worth of, say, for simplicity, say let's say $100,
Yep.
and you want to maybe allocate, say, 20% of your liquid net worth of that $100, 20% into illiquid asset like this, and then which means that you have $80 left in the liquid form to go into public stock markets, to go into real estate, or any other instrument class that you so wish to go into. So with that 20%, if you lose everything, then seriously you only lost 20% of whatever net worth that you had,
Yep.
right? And with that $20, then you adopt a portfolio approach and see what you can do with that $20. We always do not advise that you put $20 into one basket, which is maybe one private company or one startup. That is going to be highly unwise. You would distribute the 20 into maybe 20 times $1. That means 20 startups of $1 each that you go into. And why 20? Because 20 has been mathematically and historically proven to be a good size as a portfolio or as a basket of investments, and which will probably net you one outstanding return at the minimum, and some returning you the capital, if not a bit more, and obviously having a lot of others that fail. But combined as a portfolio, due to the outstanding returns and those who return you a bit and so on, you are going to get outsized returns.
So do you set yourself a certain benchmark that you want to hit, or like do you tell founders, okay, with this investment, there's some sort of expectations that I want to hit financially?
I started off thinking that way, and then because I'm doing it as a passion and also kind of like a extra activity, or what we call extracurricular activity, just something out of fun also. And then to put everything in monetary terms is going to be just highly transactional when you interact with the founders.
Exactly.
So, and if you follow my mathematics just now, if you put into 20 startups, the chance of you hitting, getting an outsized return as a portfolio is going to be quite high. So with that thinking, I no longer go into every deal measuring how much I'm going to make out of this one deal. I want to go into every deal knowing that this is a field that I like, or this is a founder that is really an expert in the area that they're in, and backing them is just a no-brainer that I got to do it because I want to be learning from him or her. It has to be out of passion, because this is an illiquid investment. It's going to be illiquid for the next few years, maybe even 10 years. And during that process itself, I think the passion will keep you going rather than the thought of how much money you're going to make.
So let's track back, right? So what were some of your first few investments or your first few like proudest startups that you have put your money in?
So excluding those earlier startups which were not in tech, like movies and so on, the tech-based investments that I did in Southeast Asia itself, the first one, or one of the first ones, would be Carousell. Carousell is today the region's largest C2C platform for pre-loved or used goods transactions. In fact, they are one of the world's largest right now, measured by whatever matrix you can throw at them. So I'm very proud that we supported them when they were just three guys, literally just three guys and an app. And today they have been backed by well-known funds internationally, like Sokoa Capital and Rakuten and so on.
So how did that start? You know, if you see pools and pools of startup founders every single day reaching out to you, right? So how do you sieve out that one golden piece? Maybe put into a context of Carousell.
For Carousell, it was partially serendipitous, and because Quest itself, we are working out of a place called Block 71, which the Economist magazine calls the world's most highly compact startup ecosystem in the world. And at Block 71 itself is where you can find a lot of different talent in venture capital, talent in angel investing, talent in startups, talent in like my professor that I mentioned, Professor Wompokam and so on, who all gravitate around the area as a means to get to know one another and to share ideas. And Carousell was a company that was incubated by NUS. We actually met them when they were still known as their earlier name called Snapcell, at a competition that was one of the first to be run in this region and in Singapore called Startup Weekend by a friend who happened to be working in a media firm at that point in time called E27. All these names I mentioned are still around, but now being run by different people and so on. But because they won number one in Startup Weekend, which we went in as a sponsor at Quest, we chose to meet them after that, and the discussion just took a while. I remember going back to Beijing with no investment made, just some connections made, but no investments made. And one night, one of the guys in Burple, which was another company, just called and say, hey, Carousell is a fundraising, we should get in touch. And we had some calls, and over the phone call, the decision was made to invest. Yeah.
Wow, it is quite through referrals, through their achievements in Startup Weekend, and many factors just fall into place that lead up to that investment.
Yes.
I see. So is there any investment theses that you follow or that you can recommend people out there listening who wants to get started on angel investing to follow?
I think it's important that you come into angel investing with some guidelines of your own. And if the guidelines are sexy enough, you can term it a thesis or something else. So for me, I wanted something that I can really understand, which for me would be digital commerce. 10 years ago, Southeast Asia is not what it is today, was not what it is today. The payment systems were fragmented. You don't have logistics who can, deliver your Lazada goods to you or whatever goods to you so fast and so on. And through the experience in China itself, I firmly believe and have been proven that commerce is the first underlying layer. Without that commerce layer or digital commerce layer, the payments, the logistics, the e-commerce and so on, there simply can be no catalyst for the ecosystem to sprout wings in other areas such as space, maritime, deep tech, cryptocurrencies and so on. So 10 years ago, we started out saying I want to do things only in digital commerce because Southeast Asia was still very new at that time and had nothing in the likes of the Carousell and the payments and so on. And the second thesis after that would be, even if it's in digital commerce, it has to be scalable, it has to be replicable, and it has to function in what I call a large internet community. So let's break it down. A scalable startup, a scalable business is if you have it as let's say $1 million revenue right now in Singapore. Can it scale and become $10 million in Singapore, $100 million in Singapore, and so on? That's scale. And people tend to misuse or misinterpret the word scale, because if you expand to Kuala Lumpur or expand to Bangkok, it's a whole new game. You can't simply replicate your current business processes and so on and expect it to work as it work in Singapore and in KL, for example. You can't. So for me, it's not scale, it's called replication. And an idea that works in Singapore may not necessarily replicate well to other cities like Yangon. So what the ideas I was looking for had to be, well, first of all, must scale in the respective city that they're from, but must also be able to replicate across the major parts of Southeast Asia. And how many parts of Southeast Asia? That brings us to the third point, which is large internet community. So in that case, we are looking at now 10 years later, very significant portions of Southeast Asia that are now already covered by internet, already have a smartphone in their hands, and definitely fit into the thesis.
It sounds like all these guidelines that you came up with came from your prior experience in entrepreneurship, and also came from your business experiences. How about someone out there who perhaps is completely unfamiliar with say, the market conditions and all these trends in technology? Would angel investing still be suitable for them in that sense? Or perhaps would they take on a backseat role? Is that more suitable for them?
I think, as we have already pointed out earlier in this segment, that it's an illiquid asset. You should also be doing this illiquid asset with a certain portion of your entire liquid net worth, for example, 20%, as in my example earlier. So with all that in mind, and you still feel that, for example, you want to focus your energies on 80%, or you want to just let someone else do the work for that 20% that you're prepared to do into, and maybe just participate from time to time.
Yeah.
Then you can do, there's two ways you can do it. One, invest into a fund, because a fund like Quest Ventures, for example, is also investing to startups. You can do that. There are many funds for you to explore investing into. They are already investing in startups and so on. Or number two, to have a more direct approach, which is to go through what we call syndicates. Syndicates allows you to work hand in hand with other syndicate members to jointly collect a pool of money to invest into a startup. So using the $20 and then divided out to 20 times $1 as an example. Imagine you have only $1 to invest into each company, and the startup is actually looking for $3 as a minimum investment. So where are you going to get the extra $2 from? As I also said, you want to have a portfolio size of 20. You don't want to over concentrate your risk onto any single portfolio or company. So in that case, you will probably raise the $2, or startup will probably raise the extra $2 from other angel investors. So what will happen is, if you already have a syndicate form, or you join an existing syndicate, you contribute $1, another investor contribute 50 cents, and so on and so forth, and it accumulates to $3. And to the startup, this syndicate that you are part of has already contributed what they need, which is the $3. It also helps. This method also helps to expose you, and is low. I would say is much lower touch. You don't have to do that much because there's a syndicate of people who are working hand in hand with you to get the deal done.
And also to go through all the legal processes and to do the assessment of the startup itself, which is the due diligence process. And everybody can lend the different expertise from their prior work experience to assess this company with their own perspective.
Yes.
I see. So what are some of the greatest lessons that you have learned in your many years of angel investments, or some of the mistakes that you have bounced back from?
Alright, I think I've made enough mistakes. I think some of them are worth sharing, some of them are just stupid mistakes that I have to live with. I think the most common mistake that most people make will be FOMO, or fear of missing out. And after just years of doing this, I don't get FOMO anymore. If a startup is just trying to FOMO me, meaning they are trying to say that, look, a lot of investors are coming in now, if you don't come in now, you're not going to get a slot to get in there. Okay, it's okay, I don't think I'm for this. I want to take the time to do my own homework and not outsource that due diligence to other angels. The second mistake would be trusting other angels too much. I would like to think that after having spent some years here, when I make an investment, I'm happy that other angel investors, actually many angel investors, would like to also be part of the deal. So I'm happy of that, but it doesn't mean I'm right every time. And whenever I'm right, of course, I'm very happy and my angels are very happy. But whenever I'm not right, then there's a certain responsibility too. Although if they have followed our earlier advice, is they spread out their portfolio, so they have 20, so one that have gone belly up, it really doesn't matter that much. But trusting other angels and not doing their own homework is also a mistake that you shouldn't be making. Next mistake will be not doubling down. You should always have some cash for making a follow-on investments. If a portfolio company has moved so far along that is raising the next round, and it's proven that it can get above the crowd and get above its own cohort of competitors and be able to raise the next round, I think it just makes a lot of sense for you to double down on the initial investment that you have made. Come in again into the startup at the new valuation to exercise what we call your pro rata rights, which is to continue to maintain the percentage stake that you used to have in the last round. That is a smart move to make, exercising your pro rata rights when you're making angel investments, and to do it for as long as you can reasonably afford it. And then maybe the last mistake would be not investing due to wrong stages. Angel investment, although the name says angel, you don't necessarily have to make the investment when the startup is at angel stage. The startup can still be at Series A stage, but and they are already raising institutional funds, but still needs some additional capital, where it's too small for the institutionals to consider, maybe too large for themselves, the founders themselves, to pump in their own cash. And that's where you as angels or as a syndicate, you can come in. I've said no to some companies before, and one of them was the wrong decision. Grab, for example, came to us at Series A, and because I was full focus on angel investing at that point in time, I didn't invest in the company at that time, which I believe was called MyTaxi, and which became Grab. I think we should be open-minded to consider startups at different stages. As long as the founders and the companies all make sense, then just go into it.
And we even see syndicates on cap tables of, say, entering at Series B even. Is that still advisable if they're, quite large already, quite late stage, right? And would you still advise your angel investors and syndicates to still go in at these stages?
I'll say why not? It's good to just diversify a bit. If you have everything at the early stage, then you're going to fall into what I always tell our angel investors at Bansi, that you are going to have a very sad initial first few years, maybe first 2-3 years. Why? Because as I said, the journey is about 10 years long.
Yeah.
And when you make angel investments, generally that money can last them anywhere from 12 to 18 months, maybe 24 months. So it is in your first 1 or 2 years that the companies start dying. And you're just going to keep seeing companies that die in the first 1 or 2 years. The companies that go on to raise additional capital, the next round of funding is going to be few and far in between. So the first few years is going to be very sad, which is why if you're in a syndicate or in an angel network or something like that, you're going to have people who can commiserate with you, who can share the same sad news with you. And only after the initial first 2 or 3 years, when after the people who need the startups that have died have died, and those who have survived have gone on to do very well, that you can really start to see light at the end of the tunnel.
I see.
And so
So, okay, besides talking about the financial aspect of it, diversifying your portfolio, another thing is also the strategic value add to startups, which I believe that you're a firm advocate of, right? So what are some of the roles that you take on as an advisor? So what are some of the strategic value that you brought to the table for a startup?
Okay, I think angel investors bring different value. Some of them are naturally just very quiet and just want to invest and just learn. And to me, they are equally as valuable as those who advise or talk. As angels ourselves, we necessarily have our own networks and so on that we can plug the startup into. For example, I've known angels who are their own titans in, say, logistics. And when we invest into a logistics company, and when we plug that founder of that startup into that network with that titan of that logistics industry, you can bet that the founder is going to learn a lot. And vice versa too. Because if the angel investor, that corporate titan of that logistics firm, keeps an open mind, I'm very sure he also learns a lot about what's happening in the technology world, that he or she can maybe even adopt and adapt for his own company.
I see. So opening doors, opening access, and also expertise in some cases. I see. So what is actually required of an angel investor, right, to be ready to become a lead investor? Because it's a bit more demanding, right?
Okay, so the term lead investor refers to an investor who actually do all the necessary processes and paperwork so that the deal can be executed or completed. It means that, for example, in the case of three syndicate members who come together, we are assigning one of them, let's say in this case myself, who will be the lead investor, and I will be the one to negotiate the terms with the startup. I'll be the one to also work with the lawyers to get the terms drafted out, being the messenger between the lawyers and the startup, and so on and so forth, coordinating with the other two syndicate investors. And all this is in addition to the work that I'm doing in my normal day job. which is why lead investors have to have a bit of spare time, have to have the capacity and maybe even the understanding and logic, for example, to do due diligence into a sector that they may not necessarily be comfortable or be aware of. For example, I'm in tech, but now I need to do a DD into logistics, for example. So I may need to call into my network of logistics friends to understand a bit more, bearing in mind that if it is something at all that my logistics friend can understand, then how really breakthrough is this idea that we're funding anyway, right? So there has to be some crossing a chasm that my logistic friend have to endure when they listen to the idea that I'm trying to convince them or trying to let them get their advice on, and bearing in mind that lots of time new ideas get shot down, but still remain convinced on this founder that I'll convince 2 other syndicate members to go along. So there's just this whole process of going back and forth and so on, and to get a deal done.
Wow, it sounds like quite a lot of things going on because you're put in so many different directions. You have to speak to incumbents in this industry to understand the market in the first place, right? But at the same time, right, the traditional people may not understand, like say more disruptive startups, which entirely change the game or even compete with the traditional players. So I think striking that balance and having that perspective comes with quite a fair bit of experience in perhaps the startup world and in angel investing as well.
Yeah, it does. I think we've spent a lot of time talking with fellow syndicate members and to convince them that a certain deal is still good to go ahead, even with the due diligence done that points them to a negative direction. And ultimately, the vindication is in the fact that the startup does very well, raises follow-on funding and so on. You really have to have some conviction when you take on the lead role.
I see. And at Quest Ventures Investment Syndicate, Quest Ventures itself is the lead investors, right? And other investors can come on in to co-invest together in a startup where Quest Ventures is already investing in as a VC. So I think that eases a lot of the workload and the time taken, especially for people who are perhaps a bit new or they're doing the first few angel investments to get started on the angel investing journey.
So I have been in Muncie for more than 10 years by now, and when I took on chairmanship about 3 years ago, I was very mindful of the fact that a lot of angel investors are really corporate titans in their own rights. Many of our members are the chief execs of well-known companies and so on, and many of them will never be able to take on the time to do a lead investment or to engage in so many of the other stuff that we do as angel investors. But they are very supportive of startups. They are very mindful of the fact that founders or young founders, young entrepreneurs is where new ideas come from, and they want to be involved and they want to support it. So what I've observed and now what we are implementing at Quest Ventures Investment Syndicate is for those deals that we are already taking a lead role in investing into at Quest Ventures through our venture capital funds, we are also raising money for the startup. Remember the $1 and the $3 that they're trying to raise, that the syndicate can only pump in $1, so that those gaps like this where the startup founder have to spend even more time on the road talking to VC firms, angel investors to raise the additional capital. Now we are saying, look, let us work with some of the angels and so on that we know and reach out to them, and maybe they want to invest in you too. And these angels will now be able to somewhat rely on the due diligence that we have done at Quest, and so that some of these owners that we have traditionally put on the lead investor in an investment angel syndicate is now offloaded a bit. Although we still say that we still advise that every deal comes with its own risk. Please, make your own assessment. So with all that considered, once we have a deal, once Quest Ventures has a deal that is circulated, we welcome our syndicate investment members to participate in the round as Quest Ventures syndicate members.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that pretty much wraps up our whole interview for today. But any closing remarks or any last advice for aspiring angel investors out there or people who are just getting started in their investing journey?
Okay, so some final words on that. I think angel investment is a highly illiquid asset class, and knowing that it's also highly risky, you want to start off right. You don't want your money tied up in high risk, illiquid investments for years and years, and having to explain to your family and friends and so on why your money is tied up there. So don't come in blindly, learn from whoever you can learn from. There are plenty of resources on the internet on angel investments, on syndicate investments, and so on and so forth. Read what you can before you invest anything.
I see. Okay, great advice. Thank you so much, James, for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
I'm Vanessa, and thank you for listening. This podcast is produced by Quest Ventures, top venture capital fund in Asia, in collaboration with Pixel, the innovation hub of Infocom Media Development Authority. Follow us for more exciting episodes to come, and stay in touch with us or find out more about Quest Ventures investment syndicates at questventures.com. Till next time.